So, gotta play the ad first. But this is Malcolm Nance. Served as an analyst at MSNBC. I don't know exactly what he did. I do not. We could check his Wikipedia page. That'll give us a general idea. He's a media pundit on terrorism, intelligence, insurgency, and torture. So he talks about terrorism, U.S. intelligence, insurgency, and torture. Sounds like he's a media pundit who goes on MSNBC to push for more war, is what it sounds like. He is a former United States Navy senior chief petty officer, specializing in naval cryptology. So, there you go. Remember the segment we did the other day, talking about how much of the media's, or many of the experts that mainstream media like MSNBC brings on to talk about the war in Ukraine are actually just intelligence operatives. Or former intelligence operatives, or former or current representatives of the State Department or of the weapons industry, of weapons contractors like Raytheon and Boeing. Here we have an MSNBC analyst who was a former officer in the U.S. Navy. And, of course, that's not a conflict of interest for MSNBC. It's the job of the media to report what the military wants you to. You know, you're supposed to be a mouthpiece of the Pentagon, and you're not supposed to critically challenge anything they say. And you're actually supposed to bring Pentagon officials onto your media show to give people the news. Nance is an intelligence and foreign policy analyst who frequently discusses history, personalities, and organizations of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Southwestern Asian and African terror groups, as well as counterinsurgency and asymmetric warfare. Gotcha. He served as a consultant for the intelligence industry. There, we have that too. Right after he served in the military. So, you know, I said that the media has a lot of former military higher-ups and a lot of weapons contractors, as well as folks who served for the intelligence industry. And Malcolm Nance hits two of those. He's a media analyst who served as a higher-up in the U.S. Navy and as a consultant for U.S. intelligence. Oh, controversy. He's pushed the Russiagate narrative, criticized people for serving on RT, called Glenn Greenwald an agent of Moscow, who's deep in the Kremlin's pocket. So this is a guy, Malcolm Nance is a guy who works for MSNBC. You know, one of the corrupt, most blatant propaganda arms of the U.S. empire in existence. That's who Malcolm Nance works for, you know, he literally served as an intelligence consultant and as a higher-up for the U.S. State Department, and now he goes on MSNBC to argue in favor of more war. But when someone like Glenn Greenwald gets blackballed from the American media, you know, won't be brought on MSNBC, won't be brought on CNN because he's actually critical of the U.S. State Department, and he's critical of these media pundits who argue in favor of war. Malcolm Nance says, oh, Glenn Greenwald reports for RT, he's a puppet of Russia. Or, Malcolm, maybe Glenn Greenwald's a journalist in the United States, and he actually wants to tell the truth, which means he's been blackballed from corporate media, leaving him with very few options, one of them being to report for RT, Russia Today. But Malcolm, who works for MSNBC, the propaganda arm of the U.S. empire, feels totally okay dismissing people's opinions because they've done any kind of reporting for RT. That means they're in the pocket of Putin. Got you, Malcolm. This right here tells us everything we need to know about him, doesn't it? Intelligence consultant, U.S. military higher up, said that Glenn Greenwald is an agent of Russia. So with that said, oops, I guess we made it through the ad. Let's watch Malcolm Nance's recent viral appearance on MSNBC, where he talked about how he is serving as a mercenary.
We begin the readout tonight with yet another escalation of Putin's war in Ukraine. Late today, President Zelensky said that Russia has begun an all-out offensive in the east. In his latest video, the Ukrainian leader said that the Russian military has begun the battle for Donbass. It's something Ukraine has been preparing for, a new phase of the war that could see up to 3 times as many Russian troops in the Donbas region. That region includes the city of Mariupol, which Russia needs in order to forge a land corridor to Crimea. The city is besieged.
All right, we're going to skip to the part with Malcolm Nance here because we all know what's been going on with Ukraine for the most part.
For displaced Ukrainians and refugees on their way out of the country. Lviv is also a supplies and logistics hub with the city suffering its first fatalities since the beginning of the war. That attack in Lviv hit close to home today with my colleague, the great Ali Arouzi, and friend of the show, Malcolm Nance, seeing the missiles rush by as they conducted an interview.
Ukraine's unique territory.
Is that going down?
No, but I've never seen a fast mover. I'm wondering whether that was a cruise missile. Did you see the aircraft?
No, I haven't.
Are we in an air raid?
Yes.
Yeah, we are. We had the air raid. So there's another coming.
Wait, there'll be 3. Stand by. Striking to the west, that's 2. We should get at least 1 more. That wasn't a plane, it was a cruise missile.
That was a cruise missile.
Yeah. Wait for 1 more. They're fired in 30-second intervals. They fire them in 30-second intervals. Smoke.
There we go.
Stand by. 3, cruise missile, caliber.
Look.
Stand by. 5, 6, 8, 9.
Did he just say stand by 3 cruise missile caliber? I mean, if, one person in the video said that they thought it was a plane, but obviously if cruise missiles were hitting Lviv here, that's a scary situation. And your adrenaline would be really high. But, of course, this is somebody who said they went to Ukraine to engage in combat. To engage in combat and use their military skills is what they'll say later to battle the Russian enemy. And I showed this to my buddy who's in the military earlier, and he couldn't believe it. That they got, he goes, smoke, caliber, as if, you can tell the caliber of gun that was fired, or the caliber of the cruise missile, or what does he say, caliber 3? He's basically just saying nonsense in a crisis, which shows how ridiculous it is that this MSNBC analyst is apparently fighting as a mercenary in Ukraine now. But yeah, and then you have one person there who says, I thought that was a plane. But let's just keep watching because there's more to this video.
10, 11,
Yeah, there
12,
it is. There's the
13,
smoke.
13.
There's the smoke.
That's 3.
So 3 cruise missiles.
Yeah.
And joining me now from a secure location in Western Ukraine is Malcolm Nance, Executive Director of the Terror Asymmetrics Project. He is fighting with the International Legion of Territorial Defense of Ukraine. And Malcolm, we just watched that video of you, and Ali Arouzi was attempting to interview you for us to get more information on what you're doing. We saw those cruise missiles fly overhead. So explain to us why you are there and what you are doing.
Well, as you know, I spent quite a bit of time here in the pre-war period. And when the invasion happened, I had friends who were in Donetsk, who were in the Ukrainian army, who were writing to us and telling us, we're not going to survive.
So right there, that's the first funny thing. The fact that this guy was working as a U.S. intelligence operative, and he was working for the Terrorist Asymmetrics Project, which just sounds like an arm of the U.S. State Department. I'm sure it is. And he was a former higher-up within the U.S. Navy, and he's talking about all this time that he spent in Ukraine prior to the war. A time when the NED and other NGOs, like the one that this guy probably belongs to, who are flooded in Ukraine now, everyone knows that Ukraine has many Western-backed NGOs with lots of influence there. Those NGOs spent $3 to $5 million in the lead up to the Euromaidan protest that was basically a U.S.-backed coup, which put a pro-U.S. leader in power and largely inflamed the conflict, which led to the war today. But he was probably one of the people organizing that, given his history with the Pentagon and with the intelligence agencies and with the private sector. In terms of these NGOs who do a lot of the U.S.'s bidding in terms of foreign policy. So we just admitted there on MSNBC, I spent a bunch of time here leading up to the war. Like, oh, did you? Did you spend a bunch of time there destabilizing Ukraine, which has largely led to this horrific conflict?
Survived tonight. We've been hit 500 times. These are graduates at Defense Language Institute. These are my friends. And,
the Terror Asymmetrics Project. Let's look that up. Someone look that up and see what it is. I guarantee you it's some NGO that serves as an arm of the U.S. State Department.
As the more I saw of the war going on, the more I thought, I'm done talking, all right? It's time to take action here. So about a month ago, I joined the International Legion.
I'm done talking. Dude, you literally... In this video alone, you've done 2 interviews with MSNBC, the U.S. corporate media outlet. What do you mean you're done talking? You're talking right now to the whole American public.
Here in Ukraine, and I am here to help this country fight, what essentially is a war of extermination. This is an existential war, and Russia has bought it to these people, and they are mass murdering civilians. And there are people.
And that's interesting framing too. This idea that it's not a war based on different material interests, or it's not a war that Russia engaged with rationally. It's not a war where Russia said, maybe we don't want to send our troops into Ukraine. But based on the U.S. destabilization of Ukraine and the right-wing neo-fascist groups being supported by proxy by the U.S. in Ukraine, we feel like Ukraine and the threats to add Ukraine to NATO and nuclearize Ukraine, Russia said that is a big enough threat to us that we think it's worth it to send our troops into Ukraine. So regardless of whether you agree with it, you can think it's the worst thing in the world and Putin is the spawn of Satan. But it's not an existential war. It's not the Russian people trying to just obliterate Ukraine and Ukrainian people and take them off the map. That's just not what it is. But that's the framing that the U.S. wants you to look at it through. That's the framing they want you to take. They don't want you to think that there are various different parties in Ukraine with various different interests and various conflicting parties, which has led to a war, and a larger, U.S. Cold War strategy towards Russia and China, which the war in Ukraine is Russian resistance against, largely. The U.S. media doesn't want you to know that. They don't want you to think that. They want you to think Putin, evil and bad, he's purposefully killing civilians, and now what they're saying is you should go join Ukraine, and become a mercenary. That's a heroic thing to do, to go to Ukraine and join the International Legion. Even though videos of Americans have come out of them saying once you join the International Legion, sometimes they don't even give you a weapon and they use you as cannon fodder. You guys who are untrained and unexperienced and speak different languages in the International Legion, you go that way and draw fire from the Russians, and then our Marines will go the other way. That's how the International Legion's being used. And I imagine Malcolm Nance, because he's an MSNBC analyst and a State Department higher-up and former intelligence official, he's probably being kept safe, right? He's probably not actually seeing any combat or any battle. We saw how he reacted to a combat situation when that missile hit. He pointed different directions and said caliber 3. This isn't somebody who's been trained in combat. But, by him coming on MSNBC and by them portraying him as a hero for doing this, for acting as a mercenary in Ukraine, they're encouraging other people to do it. They're encouraging impressionable people watching MSNBC to go join the International Legion in Ukraine, even though the U.S. government themselves have recommended against this. The U.S. government has said, no, it's too dangerous. Don't become a Ukrainian mercenary.
People here like me who are here to do something about it.
And we have some video here. This is some video that was shot by Allie's team of yourself with some supplies and the things that you are working on while you're there. We know there are about 20,000 people from 52 countries that are...
So I just want you to know, in case you're like an insane person who's thinking about going to Ukraine and fighting as a mercenary, if you go to Ukraine and fight as a mercenary, this is not the situation you're going to be in, right? They're not going to put you up in a nice little room you know, where you can type on your computer and do interviews with MSNBC. As I said, regular people who aren't former executives for the U.S. intelligence agencies are being used as cannon fodder when they join the International Legion. And then this guy's saying, you know, me and people like me who came here as mercenaries, we're doing something about it. You know, we're doing something about this big bad Putin. It's like, no, you're not. You're sipping coffee, you know, in an expensive room on your computer, encouraging regular ass poor people who are disaffected to go to Ukraine and give up their lives, you know, for a conflict that they really, really know nothing about.
Currently in Ukraine and have been there from the start of the war. What are international troops like yourself, what are you all tasked to do?
I mean, what's he doing right now? They said we got footage of him with some of the stuff he's doing down there. And so far it's been him sipping a mug and then folding his outfit.
We are here for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to protect the innocent people of Ukraine from this Russian aggression. And you know, it's not a conventional war, Joy. Even though you have two armed forces going head to head here, what you have is you have another group. I won't even refer to the Russians as an army, just using mass heavy weapons that are used in combat against civilians. They are.
Why wouldn't you refer to them as an army? They're far more of an army than, you know, say Iraq, what Iraq had when the U.S. invaded. You know, Iraq had to rely on a lot of guerrilla tactics and guerrilla warfare because they didn't have anywhere near the same military power as the U.S. But Russia does, you know, it's not the same, but they absolutely have a professional army.
They're destroying infrastructure, and then you find that they go to the cities and they massacre men, women, and children. And that is the fundamental reason everyone is here. The International Legion is a multinational force. It is men and women. There are, you know, thousands here who are here to protect this country. And for the most part, we really have to assist them in any way to stop this. And so I've decided I came here to assist them.
We have to assist them in any way to stop this. Please, Americans, come to Ukraine and sign up to be a mercenary. Even though mercenaries from the U.S. have said that most of the International Legion people are given maybe a weapon with 10 bullets, you know, and a lot of them aren't given a weapon at all. Because the Ukrainian military doesn't want to waste a bunch of their resources on people who are untrained and inexperienced. This is like propaganda to get people to be mercenaries for the Ukrainian government, is essentially what Malcolm Nance is doing here. Wild. I truly can't believe that video exists. Like, we live in the Twilight Zone. We seriously live in a simulation.